The federal government is still shut down, meaning it is impossible to visit the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute. But one man can take you there. His name is John, and the vehicle to get you there is the Rossifari podcast.
My name is Adrienne Crosier. I am the carnivore curator here at the Smithsonian's National Zoo Conservation Biology Institute.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to the Rossifari podcast. Y'all, we have spent many weeks over the last couple months at the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Biology Institute, and this is, sadly, the last of the interviews we're going to be doing from that facility. For now, at least, because obviously we're going to go back and share more incredible stories of the amazing keepers and other workers at both the Front Royal campus and, of course, the actual publicly available zoo in Washington, D.C. But we can't do that now because the federal government is still on a shutdown, meaning these amazing people are going to work every day, not knowing when they're going to get their next paycheck, but still showing up for the animals and their team. And that's amazing. And honestly, I know I put something kind of funny at the beginning of this episode, but the truth is I consider it such an honor and a privilege to be able to share some of these stories with y'all while that is happening, and to keep these keepers and vets and techs and all of these amazing people at the front of your mind as they're out there doing the thing, even though it's uncertain to them when they're going to be compensated for the incredible work they're doing. And, you know, a lot of people talk about the fact that zookeeping and all of the jobs in this world are labors of love and are passion projects, right? And that's true. And I know as a person who also has a day job that is that, as well as this podcast that is that, and the conservation stuff, all the things, I am completely motivated by passion, right? But I will tell you, when you don't know where your next paycheck is coming from, or when it's coming, or what your next meal is going to be, there ain't a passion big enough to make that okay, you know? So, yet again, I've said this every time I've talked about this topic, but I want to point out this is not the fault of the Smithsonian. This is not the fault of the National Zoo. This is, you know, the federal government, basically a bunch of really rich people making these decisions and seeing them through. And it's kind of gross, if you ask me. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. It's kind of gross. But yeah, so doing this episode now is my love letter to everyone at the National Zoo, whether I've met them, whether I've interviewed them, whether they're friends that haven't been on the podcast yet. So much love and so much props to all of you. Y'all are fighting the fight, and I could not be prouder of you all. And I'm so amazed that y'all continue to do the thing and to make it work and figure it out. And I am so proud of the relationship that Rossifari has with the entire organization over there. So thank you all for that. And I can't wait until this stupidity is ended and I can come back and see your animals again and talk to more amazing people. And whether it's for interviews or just hanging out with the people there that I love, I cannot wait to get back there. So, okay, that was my long rant about this. But, this matters, y'all. It's really important. And with that said, I'm going to take you right to my interview. It's with Adrienne Crosier, who is absolutely fantastic. And we talk about some of the carnivores at the Front Royal campus and a whole lot about black-footed ferret conservation, which is a really special, really cool topic. So, we're going to skip all the normal intro stuff. And y'all just enjoy this one, okay? This is the magical campus that most people never get to visit, and it is a private, area where a lot of work goes on behind the scenes. And I am so excited to be here and to get to share some of this with my audience. And so you're the curator of carnivores. So what carnivores do you curate?
So right now we have cheetahs, black-footed ferrets, maned wolves, red pandas, and clouded leopards.
Very cool. That's a really nice, diverse collection. And what is the point of having a facility with a collection that people don't come to?
So the primary roles that our animals serve here are support for conservation breeding programs and re-release programs, and also to support research and sustainability.
Okay. Very cool. That's great. No, that's wonderful. And so, what's your background? What brought you not just to this position, but specifically to, again, this place that is like a zoo that's not a zoo?
I have kind of a convoluted background. So I started as a pre-vet major and as an undergrad, and then decided along the way that I did not want to go to vet school, and became very interested in reproductive physiology, and went to North Carolina State University to do both my undergrad and eventually my PhD. But I think the turning point in my undergraduate career was an internship that I did at the San Diego Zoo. I was in their reproductive physiology department and just really enjoyed the research and being able to work with the animals and spending time in the lab. I really liked that mix. So I finished my PhD working on cattle.
Oh.
So my background is all domestic species pretty much. Was at that point, other than that internship. And when I was finishing my PhD, I was looking for different positions and really wanted to get back into wildlife. I felt like we had enough cows and sheep and domestic species in the world. I wanted to work on species that we needed to make more of. And started communicating with folks here. At the time, the head of the reproductive physiology department was Dr. David Wilt. And we started communicating on email. And because I wasn't too far away, I would drive up and have meetings and meet the staff and just spend some time with folks. And luckily, it turned into a postdoctoral fellowship, which was actually based in Namibia, working on cheetahs.
Wow.
And when he called me to talk about that opportunity, I immediately said yes. I had no idea where Namibia was. I knew nothing about cheetahs. All of my background had been on hoofstock. So not only did I not know anything about cheetahs, I didn't know much about carnivores at the time. So I spent 6 months down at the Rock Creek campus of our zoo being trained by personnel there, and then went to Namibia for what turned into 3.5 years.
Wow. And like fully living abroad that entire time?
No, I did come back.
Okay.
I came back for Christmas and,
Sure, but you were living there. You were just visiting when you came.
Yes.
That's a long time.
It was a long time. Yes, wow. That's what my parents said.
I believe it. So did you have to learn another language or anything like that? Or was it all just English?
Yeah, the national language there actually is English. Oh, cool. So I lucked out because I'm terrible with languages.
Fair.
So that was good for me. And it was amazing. So we were all living at the Cheetah Conservation Fund, based out at the research facility, which was about 40 minutes from the nearest town of any sort. So we were kind of in a fishbowl, the staff that was there full time, but we became extremely close and tight because there was just a core group of us that were there all the time. And then there were a lot of people coming and going, a lot of volunteers and students and things like that. So it was really helpful to have that core group of long-term staff members there that we could, have that network and just help each other through the whole process, because it was a very intense living and working environment.
I would imagine so. Yeah, that's really amazing, though. My wife is a vet and actually did a couple months out in Namibia with CCF
awesome.
as well. So yeah, and I've had Dr. Marker on the pod and stuff. So we have a lot of connections to CCF. That's very, very cool. So you're out there. What kind of work were you doing out there?
So the primary project was to understand the reproductive physiology of male cheetahs.
Okay.
We had resident cheetahs at CCF that we would utilize for research on semen and sperm quality, also looking at cryopreservation techniques, the best ways to freeze and thaw sperm samples for long-term storage. Mm-hmm. And then when we would have free-ranging males come through the facility, usually they were there for a very short period of time. We would do a full biomedical exam, collect sperm from them. We used the techniques that we had developed on the resident cats to then freeze those extremely valuable wild samples that we knew we would only probably get our hands on those animals once in their lifetime. And then establish a genome resource bank, which is still ongoing. Staff at CCF are still keeping that up. There's a lot of sperm samples in the bank, as well as blood and tissue and all those kinds of biological samples.
Now, that's very cool. And I'm curious. So I know we have, SSPs and all of that jazz. And those exist to help with the genetics of the population and make sure that we don't have inbreeding problems and stuff. Do you ever do those sperm samples, the frozen sperm, does that ever get introduced into our population here? Or is that only for, potential rewilding or something like that?
So in the past, we have been able to import some sperm into our population, and we have used that for assisted breeding, artificial insemination, and in vitro fertilization. The last sperm import was about 20 years ago. And since that time, the support from the government of Namibia has not been in place for continued exports of those biological samples.
That's so interesting. One of the things that I find just fascinating about conservation work in general is just how much things change, and be it governments or individuals or whatever. I've heard so many stories on this podcast of organizations that have two leaders that see things differently, and the organization splits and the animals get separated and all kinds of stuff. And it's so heartbreaking to me. And I'm like, why couldn't the Beatles of conservation just stay together? Like that's how it feels to me. So yeah, no, there are a lot of elements that go into it behind just the, let's save cheetahs or let's save black-footed ferrets. And I know you know that, but obviously talking to the audience right now. But that's so fascinating. And so you're in Namibia, you do this incredible work, and let's go. What's the next step?
Yeah, so we, at the time, had never had cheetahs based here in Front Royal. And right around 2005, I was finishing up my postdoc, and there were discussions starting on this side of the ocean about building a breeding facility here in Front Royal. And they wanted someone to lead the research, lead the breeding program. And we had learned so much about the cats while I was in Namibia, so many unexpected things about the male physiology. And we just realized there was so much we didn't know about this species. And to really help them reproduce consistently here back at home, we needed to do so much research, but also really ramp up our breeding efforts. So we started construction here in Front Royal on the breeding facility. That was complete in 2007. We brought in our first cats the end of that year. And then we started doing a lot of research, a lot of traveling. I was traveling almost every month at that time to do different research projects. And then brought in male cheetahs a couple years later and started the on-the-ground breeding program here.
And has it been successful?
We have had 19 litters and over 80 cubs.
Wow.
Might be 80 cubs. 80 cubs. And 80 cubs.
No one's gonna fact check you, I promise. So you have to answer a very important, very serious question for me right now. I have heard from multiple people that there is an understanding belief, call it what you will, that cheetah cubs are ugly. And I have met multiple cheetah cubs, and I think they are about the cutest cubs in the world. But there is like a group of like cheetah keepers that I know and stuff that have told me that like people, and even some of them are like, cheetah cubs are ugly. I can already tell by your face. No, they're like the cutest thing in the world, right?
They are. They're adorable.
They are so cute, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you are an expert. So like that officially solidifies it that cheetah cubs are cute. And if you disagree, you can shut up because the expert has spoken. So I wanted to get that on the podcast. But I do too. I've seen some really young ones. I've been incredibly lucky with what I've gotten to do with all of this. And they might be, them and binturongs might be the tops for like truly like babies that are already adorable.
Well, we have the benefit also of being able to watch our moms and young cubs on camera. And so we get to see all of those moments that you wouldn't see if you were just, in their space, because they're going to act completely normally when they don't know you're watching. And you get to see some amazing bonding moments. So I disagree with those people.
Exactly. I do too. I had the feeling. I've never understood that, but that's awesome. So then from there, I assume that you just did the normal career thing and then became...
No, I wouldn't say it was a normal career. None of this is
normal, and I love it.
Along the way, I really became quite passionate about the management side, especially in those early years of managing the cheetah collection, becoming more involved in the cheetah SSP, still doing the research, but doing a lot of the on-the-ground breeding management. And then that morphed into my role with the black-footed ferrets. And then I morphed out of really the research side of the house into the animal management side of the house. But I didn't come up the normal way. Most people at a curatorial level have come up from a keeper position, and I never did that part. So I just kind of switched over from the other side.
That's really cool. And I bet it gives you a really interesting perspective, and probably also means you need to lean on your keepers a little bit more, at least at first, which I think probably helps, because I think one of the problems some keepers at some facilities face in general is a feeling that like they don't know as much as their curators or their supervisors. But in this case, like they have the experience, you have other knowledge, and you can combine it, which I think is really cool.
And we have a great keeper team. They are all so passionate and they work so hard. So every day I'm impressed by them.
That's awesome. Now, we're here today to talk about black-footed ferrets. And for my listeners, don't worry, there will be a whole separate episode about red pandas, because all of them are listening right now going, let's get to the pandas. We're not going to. But that is coming, don't you worry. So I wanted to cover that right now, because I have a lot of fandas that listen to this podcast, including this guy right here. So so that is coming. But so let's talk black-footed ferrets. Obviously a very important conservation story. But I'm guessing, as is often the case with things that are in your own backyard, in your own country, a lot of people listening probably don't even really know the details. So can you talk a little bit about what their story is?
So the black-footed ferrets are a native North American carnivore. They were thought to be completely extinct in the wild. In the early 1980s, a very small population was found out in the western part of the U.S. by a dog named Shep. And the dog actually brought a ferret back to the farm. The ferret was dead, but that allowed researchers to realize that there was a population living out there. And so that population was monitored for a few years, and then they realized that to sustain this population, they needed to bring it into facilities under human care to really, move the breeding efforts forward and to produce as many offspring as possible in as short a period of time, because there were so few individuals left. And so the breeding facilities began, and also a lot of the research started at the same time. So there was a lot of research on assisted reproduction, a lot of AI, semen collection, semen cryopreservation. A lot of those techniques were developed very early. using domestic ferrets as a model, but then quickly adapted to the black-footed ferrets. Assisted breeding in ferrets is actually quite successful. We have over a 30% success rate for artificial insemination, which
is fantastic.
It's very high for a carnivore. One of the benefits that we have with the species is we are able to monitor the female's estrus cyclicity extremely closely, because we can get them in small handling cages for a few seconds. We actually flush cells from the vagina, and then we can look at those cells under the microscope to know exactly where those females are in their estrus cycle. And we can time both artificial insemination and breeding introductions very carefully and know exactly when we need to either put the male in or when we need to do the artificial insemination.
That's fascinating. I guess that domestic and black-footed ferrets are fairly closely related then?
They're somewhat closely related, yes. And domestic ferrets do make a really great model species for the black-footed ferrets.
That's very cool. I think that it's got to be interesting to be a person learning about this for the first time and thinking of the idea of ferrets being an endangered species when you can walk into PetSmart and play with some.
Yes.
And I know those are different ferrets, but I do think I think that's a little bit easier maybe of a story to tell than, there is a, again, sticking with red pandas, there is a animal in Nepal and China that's real cute, but you can't go in your backyard and see one in a pet store or whatever, hopefully, if you do something seriously wrong. So
the challenge that ferrets face is that their food source, their housing source is the prairie dog. And so they need those prairie dog burrows it's where they live, that's what they eat. And farmers do not like the prairie dogs on their land because it's detrimental to farming activities, et cetera. And so that's what was happening all through the early 1900s, is the farmers were eradicating the prairie dogs, and therefore the ferrets were going extinct because they had lost that food and burrow system for their very livelihood.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's what these ferrets are facing, but what are you doing to help the population?
So here at our breeding facility and at other breeding facilities across North America, we have populations that we breed every year. We carefully monitor the genetics. We carefully monitor the demography. We produce as many black-footed ferret kits every year as we possibly can. And then we work with Fish and Wildlife Service to re-release animals back into different release sites throughout Colorado, Wyoming, even down into Arizona. And then we, of course, maintain our breeding population for the next year. Ferrets are highly seasonal, and so we do kind of have a downtime over the winter. And so that's when we kind of reset for the year. So we do all of our transfers in and out in the fall, and then everything is just very, very quiet through the winter with our breeding population for the next spring. And then usually around March, things start gearing up again. And we start having babies anywhere from April to May. Right now, we've got over 150 ferrets, I believe, over in the colony.
Wow.
So we have 64 kits alive this year. So it was a really good production year.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
We have over 100 black-footed ferrets in the colony right now.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing. That is a whole lot of ferrets.
It's a whole lot of ferrets. Yes. It's a whole lot of ferrets.
So I am curious about a couple things. First of all, since these are animals that are being bred for at least potential reintroduction, how does that affect husbandry and all that stuff?
We are very hands-off. We don't do any training at all. We do limited enrichment. And it's enrichment where we don't interact with the individuals. We try to do as much whole prey feeding as we can. So they do get frozen thawed rats several times a week. And then we are also able to do live rat feeding for the kits throughout the summer, which is really important for their learning of how to hunt. So mom teaches them how to dispatch the rats. And then when they are sent out to Colorado to the Fish and Wildlife Service base there, they are put through what they call ferret boot camp. It's a soft release program.
Okay.
And having those skills coming in, being able to kill prey on their own is really beneficial to them to be able to survive in that soft release situation. And then also as they go into a full release into the wild.
Very cool. Now, do they switch from rats to prairie dogs at some point, or are they like eating rats out there now?
No, so they don't switch to prairie dogs here. We do only live rat feedings here, but out at the base in Colorado, they do have access to live prairie dogs when they're in that soft release situation.
Interesting. That's very very cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
And that's, I believe, one of the boxes they have to check before they can go through full release. They have to prove that they can kill a live prairie dog on their own.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what happens to a ferret that wouldn't be considered a good candidate for release for whatever reason?
They would stay back for the breeding program. And we also do have a small number of black-footed ferrets that are serving as ambassadors in different zoological facilities so that people can tell the story. Usually they are older animals that have retired from the breeding program that are then at zoos so people can talk to the public and meet a black-footed ferret in person. And I think that's been really helpful for people to be able to actually see them because it's not an animal you're going to come across on a regular basis, to say the least. So.
Very cool. I am mildly curious, though. So if an animal isn't a good candidate for re-release, is it still a good candidate for breeding? You know what I'm asking?
Yes.
Like, are you breeding for? Obviously, the answer is no. But the only way I can think to phrase the question is: are you breeding then generation for less traits? And obviously, that's not what's happening. But that's what's going on in my brain.
No, that's a great question. And it doesn't necessarily translate. You know, if mom isn't the greatest hunter, it doesn't necessarily mean that her kits wouldn't have more of a survival instinct. But also the males don't have any role in kit upbringing.
Okay.
So if the males turn out to be not the greatest hunters, that isn't something that they would be teaching the kits directly anyway. But there's other reasons why ferrets might not be good release candidates. One primary reason is they have to have intact canines to be able to go through the re-release program. So if they're missing one canine, then they're probably okay through the release program. But obviously, those are really important for their hunting. So if somewhere along the way an animal has lost a couple canines, then they would not be considered a good release candidate.
Okay, so yeah, that makes a lot of sense then. Very cool. And what is the ecological niche that black-footed ferrets play?
So obviously they help keep the prairie dog population under control.
Right. Can you make some hunt deer and drop them in Pennsylvania and New York? Because
a little small for
a little small, fair.
But they are any animal in the ecosystem holds an important role. So they are a small carnivore. Obviously, there's larger carnivores out there, coyotes, then would eat black-footed ferrets as well as prairie dogs. So it's the whole umbrella of the ecosystem. Every species is important for maintaining species above them, as well as helping to control populations below them.
Okay, very, very cool. And so talk to me about the success. I mean, obviously you had a great breeding year this year, but in general, how has this been going?
Yeah, we have a very successful ferret breeding program here. We've been involved in the program for decades. We do a lot of research, both assisted breeding, and also right now we have a lot of projects going on in looking at microbiome of the ferrets, both reproductive microbiome as well as GI microbiome. We've been producing kits, again, for decades. I think we have over 1,200 animals that have been produced here, not including the numbers from this year. So we're probably close to 1,300 after this year.
That's amazing. Yeah. Wow. Very cool. Do you or anyone on your team ever get to go out to Colorado and see the next part of it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Yeah. I have been to the Ferret Conservation Center in Colorado working with their team on assisted breeding many times. And that's a great collaboration. We've worked together on artificial inseminations for many, many years. There also are opportunities for people to go out and do spotlighting of the black-footed ferrets to try to do population estimates. Folks can go out and assist with biomedical surveys and things like that. The trick about all of that, though, is you have to be able to stay up all night because the ferrets are very nocturnal.
Fair.
And so all of that work is done overnight. So it doesn't appeal to everybody, but the people that have gone out to do it have had really great experiences. So there's great teams of folks working on the ground in the field, tracking the populations, making sure that they are doing those population estimates. And then the biomedical surveys usually happen once or twice a year. Often they're in the fall to assess not only populations, but they also put in microchips so they can track individuals if they're recaptured over time and take blood samples and things like that.
Cool. That sounds amazing. Wow. Very fun. I'm so fascinated by this whole idea and just how interconnected it all is. Because there's this place out in Colorado and there's this facility and there are other facilities around the country doing the thing, plus the stakeholders and Fish and Wildlife, and I'm sure a bunch of other things and stuff. And I'm so curious, even especially with all of that going on, and being such a big part of it, but also just one cog in all the, this wheel. Do you ever take the moment and just like pause and think like, oh yeah, I and my team are saving this species?
Yeah, there is definitely some pride in our contribution to ferrets and other species. When I've had the opportunity to meet all of the people that are involved, especially with ferret reintroduction, there are so many different state and federal agencies and NGOs and folks working on the ground. It's a really big group of people. And they're also passionate about the ferrets, prairie dogs, the ecosystem. It really is an extensive network of organizations and people. It's really impressive when you get to meet all of them and realize, like you said, you're such a part of this bigger picture effort that involves so many different agencies.
That's awesome. Very cool. I have to ask, and you're going to say you don't have one, but I want you to tell me the truth. So you have these species that you are the curator of and that you take care of. Which one's your personal favorite?
I knew you were going to ask that.
Yep. We have a rule on this podcast. You have to say what your favorite is because people pretend they don't have them, and then they do. We all do.
I like all of our species for different reasons is the challenge. So cheetahs were my first wildlife species. They will always hold a special place in my heart because they were my introduction to not only wildlife management, but conservation and that connection of working with the animals in the wild, being based in Africa, and then translating that all back to our populations here, keeping up those collaborations and that network. That whole program is just so important to me that,
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. Yeah, that's very cool. That's very cool. I actually have a funny cheetah story to tell you about a visit to the zoo down in DC. I was there one day, and there was one of the cheetahs that was laying in the grass, as cheetahs are wont to do. And there was a father with his son. And the cheetah suddenly popped its head up. And so suddenly we see this cheetah that literally none of us could see before in this bright green grass. And the father goes, "You see, son, that's called camouflage. That animal was camouflaged and now we can see it." And I was like, let it go, let it go. And sometimes I do like to, I try to educate when I can, but I was just like, they're having a moment. It's fine.
That's right.
But I every time that I'm at the zoo here and I go to the cheetahs, I can't help but think of, Look at the camouflaged cheetah.
Yes.
So is there anything else that you want to tell my listeners about your role in black-footed ferret conservation or the program in general or any of that stuff?
I think the unique aspect of the black-footed ferret program in particular is that it encompasses all the different pieces of what we at the National Zoo represent. So we have this amazing breeding colony that we produce a lot of animals from. We do intense genetic management. We do a lot of research, biological research, as well as collaborating with our scientists in the field to help them with their research on tagging and tracking. And then we have the release component all at the same time. So it's the sustainability and the research and the conservation breeding all together. And we learn something from the species every year. Every breeding season we go through, we learn more about the animals.
That's very cool. So if people who are listening want to help black-footed ferrets, other than begging you for a job, what can they do?
So there is a friends group of the black-footed ferrets. It's called Black-Footed Ferret Friends.
Amazing.
And there is a website, blackfootedferret.org, that if folks want to go to, there is an opportunity there to be able to donate to the species.
Perfect. Awesome. And then it is time. It's time now, don't you know? We've come to the end of the show. But there's one tail left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story.
I've definitely had my share of anal gland explosions when doing semen collections. And I won't get into more details than that. Necropsies, we used to do all of our own necropsies. They still do. But when I was there, I was involved in a lot of necropsies at Cheetah Conservation Fund. And the first few were very educational. I had been involved in a lot of necropsies before. Necropsies, I say that mostly slaughterhouse visits for domestic animals. But those were my first necropsies. And I don't know, that's not necessarily gross, but it was very unique for me to be involved in that. When I was living in Namibia, when I first got there, I was the only person living in this old farmhouse for a period of time. I didn't have any housemates, and so the house was very quiet. There weren't people around for most of the day. And there were baboons that liked to hang out at the house. Oh. And one day I came home and the entire front porch was covered in poop.
Oh.
The windows, the door, and so I had to clean the whole front porch of baboon poop. After that, I got retired Anatolian shepherd dogs to come live with me to keep the baboons away.
Smart. So, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and I ended up bringing one of them back to the U.S. with me after Amazing. I finished. So that was very, lucky for both of us. Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was great to meet you.
I love when people have a unique path to their careers in this field. It's so inspiring and it's so exciting. And the work that Adrienne was talking about is just incredible. What a cool human. What a cool facility. Just all the stuff. All the stuff is so cool. I love the black-footed ferret conservation work so much. So grateful to get to share this story with y'all. That's it for now from the National Zoo. And I do hope to make it be not that's it as soon as we can. But until then, a couple quick reminders. Make sure that you are following along on the socials at Rossifari. Make sure that you hit subscribe so you don't miss any of the episodes here, the Tuesday interviews or the Friday Zoo News episodes. And if you'd like to support the pod, you can do so for as little as $3 a month by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. Just as all of my Red Panda level patrons did, including Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Steve Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, Melissa Reed, Carrie Kirkpatrick, John Lewis, who is also here for stickers, Kevin Williams, and Cormac McMuffin. Meow. And we'll see you back here on Friday for Zoo News. But until then, remember, friends, the words, Newsy credits. Nope, that's the wrong one. Ha-ha! I'll leave it in because it's funny. The word credits is Steider Kiswen. Oh my God, I said that wrong too. Y'all, I had a really long week. It was a good week, but it was a long week. You'll hear more about it on Zoo News. Let's try this one more time. And remember, y'all, the word credits backwards is Steiderk. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.